seems like it follows Gandhi, that talks about how important it is to take care of ourselves and our own personal transformation, our community, and to be able to fight for some institutional accountability. And this story that takes place just a few blocks from here, we were blessed enough to have a community member that moved there, and we got to watch up close, made us be very connected personally as well as politically to the story of real estate reigning in Brooklyn over elders. But we all have stories of displacement that we can tell and we know of. It's getting to be more and more pervasive. How hard it is to manage, we know that. I reached out originally when we were thinking of this platform to people at a campaign with the Domestic Workers Alliance and a campaign they had called Caring Across the Generations. Turns out they have their national conference this weekend. I happened to see it on my Facebook page, 500 caregivers gathered in DC to talk about how to make their jobs better. But the Caring Across the Generations campaign is one that says we all in our lives are cared for, care for others, sometimes pay someone else to do that caring, sometimes are paid to do that caring, sometimes do that caring often without being paid. But that we don't get through life without having someone had held us when we were little, holding someone when they get old, and all the things in between for what that means. It's unfortunate that that also means finding housing in a society that makes it so difficult. About 3 years ago, Annemarie was told that she would have to move out of the house that she lived in for 30 years. And as a community, we came together to help her move and find a place that she could both afford and would be comfortable enough, including that she could move in with her cat at the time. And those are big deals for any human being, but when in a society where there's too much alienation, we need to hold on to the things that are going to hold us. And trying to find her a home that would comfort her was hard. And then only a few months later to find out she'd have to move again and get involved in this battle that is much, much larger than any one person. And Sandy reminded me sort of the political battle that is in front of us, which really is one of, almost sounds like conspiracy in terms of the policies in place to make it possible for a few to make a lot of money at the behest of the rest.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to end up repeating some of what you said there, but because I was kind of giving the background too, as far as I know. But since I've been here with Annemarie, I've known Annemarie since I joined Ethical Culture 12 years ago in 2004, and many have known her much longer. And I think Annemarie said you joined here in 1980.
Yes.
Right, with Paul, your husband. So. Many of our members, as Rebecca's already said, got involved in helping Annemarie move in 2013 after she was forced to leave her apartment of 25 or 30 years in a two-family house when the landlord died. The daughter inherited the house and told Annemarie she would have to leave. Annemarie kept hoping the new owner would let her stay, but we found out after she had to leave that, surprise, surprise, the house was torn down and a multi-story condo building was erected. Sounds familiar, right? Yeah. We investigated other possibilities of places for her to move. Member Mary Richardson here took her to look at some apartments to rent in her Midwood neighborhood, but age 90 she didn't feel really safe moving into a regular apartment house where she didn't know anyone. Another member, Tasha Paley, who's not here today, but she's lived down in Mexico, thought of the Prospect Park assisted living residence, which had many services for seniors and was only 6 blocks away from her friends at Ethical Culture. Tasha, Liesl Burns, I, and Annemarie met with the admissions director of the Prospect Park residence in November 2013. The director said there was only one apartment available and we should hurry to pay the entry fee and help Annemarie move in like a week later as soon as possible, which we did, Moving was a big production because Annemarie was moving into a small 2-room apartment from a 3-bedroom apartment she had occupied with her husband, Paul Mogil, for many years and where she continued to live after his death. Another ethical member, Fiona Bonham, was the person who arranged and helped in myriad ways with the move, and she deserves a lot of credit. It was a big job for other people too. Then only 3 months after Annemarie had moved to PPR, Prospect Park residents. In early of March 2014, management called a meeting of all the residents and family members and announced they were closing the residence and everyone had to move out in 90 days. We learned afterwards that the landlord owner, Haysha Deitch, had secretly made a deal to sell the building to another developer, Sugar Hill, in January, 2 months before he announced that he was closing the residence. And he had actually applied to the New York State Department of Health, which licenses assisted living places, to close the residence the previous September, 2 months before the admissions person encouraged Annemarie to move in. And Annemarie would have never moved there if she'd known the place was closing, of course. After the March 2014 closing announcement, most of the 130 residents and their families got scared and moved out in the next few months. But Annemarie and some of the other residents didn't budge and refused to move. Brad Lander, the city council member whose districts includes the residents and Brooklyn Ethical, got involved in organizing protest demonstrations at the residence, and he was quoted in newspaper stories about the outrageous closing of PPR. He described the landlord as evil, which got a lot of coverage, I remember. Then Legal Aid's Judith Goldiner and Aurora DiCarlo, also from Legal Aid, with pro bono help from Jason Johnson and Fred Millett and Kevin Kremen, who are all here today, except Laura couldn't make it today. Yeah, Judith Goldiner will talk more about this. They decided to start a lawsuit against the landlord owner through his LLC. They have these LLCs, so you never know who really is the owner. It's very tricky. And also against the New York State Department of Health, which licenses assisted living facilities and allowed the improper closing of the facility. And Judith will talk about this, I'm sure. The landlord tried to force residents out by serving bad food and cutting services like heat and hot water, and then cutting the air conditioning in the summer. But the legal team went to court many times to restore the improper and illegal cutbacks in service. By 6 months ago, there were only 5 residents remaining in the residence. Annemarie and Alice Singer, who hopefully she will be coming later, coming to the garden, to our party afterwards. There were only these 5 remaining residents, 2 on the 8th floor, and Annemarie and Alice became friends and had all their meals together in Alice's room. After the dining room became unusable because of the flood that they never bothered to repair. Alice's daughter, Joyce Singer, who is here today with her husband, has fought very hard with the help of the legal team to maintain services. The other 3 remaining residents live on the 6th floor. I invited their family members to attend, but they all live far away, the family members from Park Slope, so I don't know if they can make it. But we do have a couple of former family, Pam Ransom is here and Sandy Rayburge. Yeah, Sandy, okay. I can't see you, Barney. Anyway, so they're here, and I'm very glad they're here, and that's what I have to say.
I want to invite Judith up next, and I just want to see if Kay's in the room. Hi. And Brad, or someone from his office? Okay, just get a sense of speakers. Thank you, Judith. Introduce yourself, the rest of it, and maybe
My name is Judith Goldiner, and I work at the Legal Aid Society. And it's really a pleasure to be here and to be celebrating Annemarie today. So let me take a step back as well. So about 2.5 years ago, I got a call from Brad Lander, and he said, Judith, there's this horrible thing that's happening in our neighborhood. The landlord at the Prospect Park residence is just telling 120 elderly people that they have to leave or they're going to be evicted in 30 days. And surely there's something you can do legally. And I said, Brad, I bet there is actually nothing I can do legally, but I am going to come to, I'll come to a meeting and we'll talk about what we think we can do. And I recruited Aurora DiCarlo, who unfortunately can't be here, but is an amazing lawyer for elderly people. She runs our office in Brooklyn for the aging. And so Aurora and I went to this meeting, and I went to a meeting with a lot of people. And I said, look, I don't know what we can do, but I bet we can get a little more time. So I guess that was the truest thing I said there, because we were able to get a lot more time. And I knew we couldn't do this alone, so we reached out to Kevin. Kevin, can you stand up for a sec? Kevin Kremen from MFY, who is really the leading expert on assisted living facilities. And so I brought in Kevin and I said, Kevin, like, we gotta do something here. And he's like, Judith, you have no idea how bad the law is. I said, okay, that's good to know. We'll keep on going from there. And then we said, well, we're really going to need more help with this. So we reached out to our pro bono firms, and Fitzpatrick, the firm Fitzpatrick, stepped up and said, we really want to do this, we really want to help. And we were lucky enough to get both Jason Johnson, who is standing in the back, and also from Fitzpatrick. And really, this was a dream team. Like, really, of all the people, I have the least expertise. But all together, you know, Kevin's expertise in assisted living, and Aurora knowledge of aging, and my little knowledge of landlord tenant, and Fred and Jason, who did all of the work. Did all of the work, like just motion after motion, case after case, just hitting this landlord as far as we could. But again, none of this could happen on its own. And I thought that's what was so inspiring about what you said, because so much of what happened here had to do with the community coming together for demonstration and rally and court dates and being together as a community. And, our elected officials, especially Brad Lander, who, every time I called and said, the landlord is doing this next despicable thing, or the Department of Health is doing this next despicable thing, we've got to do something more public than just bringing another motion in court. They completely stepped up. We had Brad organizing the public advocate, our controller, our state senator, our assembly member. They all came together. I also have to say that we were very lucky because we had one of the few judges who cared about justice. And one of the reasons we ended up where we did with this lawsuit is because we have a judge who is willing to stand up to the state and willing to stand up to, an evil landlord, and that is the right word for him, who was prepared to cut off essential services for people who stood up to him, and who was prepared to really do anything in his power to get people out. We had great press too, and some of that is to do with all of those things, the community being out there, having great legal rulings, having the elected officials with us. All of that meant that we also were able to pound that guy in the press all of the time. And let's not underestimate how important that is as well. But of course, the most important was that Annemarie and the other family members and the other women who were left were willing to stick it out and fight. And honestly, I'm so impressed with them, because that's really hard. It's hard to fight on and on when you don't have essential services, you're very elderly. It's not the easy thing to do. And they stuck it out. They took on a very rich, very powerful landlord and the state of New York to say, we are not going to allow this to happen. Because let's remember, as bad as this landlord is, and he's very bad, he was enabled by your State Department of Health. We vote to put them in there. They are not responsive to us. We should think about what that means. So we have, a settlement now that will hopefully mean that the people who are left will be able to age with dignity somewhere else. But our lawsuit continues because we continue to have claims against the Department of Health and how they acted here, how they treated people, how disrespectful they were to both our elderly people, and how they allow assisted living facility operators to do whatever they want. And we can't allow that to continue. We have to make it clear to our elected officials, to the governor, that that cannot continue. We will continue our lawsuit. We hope our lawsuit will have an important legal precedent to say that they cannot issue closing plans the way they did. They have to allow people to transition to places that meet their needs most appropriately, the most integrated setting. We will continue, and we will need your help in doing that, because when the last person moves out of Prospect Park, residents, we are going to continue to sue the Department of State, and we'll need the help of the community and the help of the press and the help of our elected officials to make that happen. I do want to tell one story about Annemarie, because when I went to tell Annemarie that I thought we had a settlement which was as good as we were going to get, and I thought that it was important for us to take it. She said to me, you know, Judith, I don't know that I can move again. I don't know that I'm strong enough. And I said, Annemarie, how can that be? You are the strongest person that I know. You are the person who has fought this landlord, brought him to his knees. He begged us to stop going to the press. He begged us to stop. How can it be that you can't, you're not going to be able to do this? I know you can do it. And Annemarie, what did you say to me? You said, you know, I think I can too. And so we're here to praise Annemarie, and I'm here to do that too. So, you know, happy birthday, Annemarie.
Thank you, Judith. Of course, tears in my eyes as I see Annemarie on a motorcycle. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. If you know the story of the little engine that could. Now, Lucia, continue on. I'd like to invite Kay Webster, who is an old friend of mine. We both worked in construction together. When I came across her name recently, I was like, what? Oh, right, no surprise. So Kay can introduce herself as an activist on the Lower East Side, where people are meeting a similar story.
We were in the women's construction worker movement, seems like decades, and I know Liesl for decades too, in an international peer counseling community, so this feels like old home. Ellen Rager, I know her from the subcommittee on the elimination of racism, which now has another name, but anyway. Let's see. Greetings from the Lower East Side and from the people who are fighting for the return of the Rivington House nursing home to its rightful owners, us. We are honored to join you in celebrating the birthday of a resilient woman who refused to go quietly at the command of a landlord who had misplaced his humanity. We have need of new terms to describe what women like Annemarie are doing, because protester doesn't quite cover it. The Native women of Standing Rock, who are blocking a disastrous oil pipeline, call themselves protectors, and that's how I think of you. We as Neighbors to Save Rivington House proudly join you in the fight to ensure that elders and the vulnerable of this city will not be shunted aside to profit the few who would prey upon those who are in our collective care. We too were told to give up, that it was over, and to move on. We didn't. We insisted on exposing what happened at Rivington House, and with the help of the Lowdown, a local news source, we did not go quiet into that good night. We organized, we wrote, we researched, we held press conferences, we sought legal counsel, we joined with local representatives, community board, and community-based organizations like University Settlement House, CAV, and GOLD. And we reached across many divides. Laws will change, and the actions of profiteers, lobbyists, some electeds, and government agencies are now rightly open to the public's gaze. One of the profiteers, the Allure Group, has been banned from buying 2 other nursing homes, one in Harlem and one in Coney Island. That was Attorney General Snyderman, just to give credit. One of the profiteers who hid their future bonanza from the city, Slate Property Group, and I like naming names, was removed from a lucrative city job. The other partners, China Vanka and Adam America, should also be banned from profiting off our city in the future. And I should say that the Crown Heights Tenant Association was very active in removing slave property. All of this is good, but it does not undo the damage to those who were harmed by the original eviction. Nor does it provide a home in their own neighborhood, a neighborhood they built, for those who can no longer care for themselves. In my community of the Lower East Side, we have seen images of an 84-year-old woman in a wheelchair begging to stay in her home. The Bialystok nursing home as it shut down around her. We saw Cabrini nursing home closed with the eviction of longtime elderly neighbors and family. Rivington House was home to 115 ill, poor, and mostly African heritage and Latino residents, all for the profit of the few. How did our city allow this to happen to our citizens and most in need? Sometimes, as Annemarie, as you understood, you just have to say no. Not this time, not today, and simply refuse to budge. Therefore, the neighbors of Rivington House will not rest until we have our building back, because no, not today, not this time. As we see all over our city and our country, people are waking up to the abuses in our democracy. Some despair and follow demagogues. Some just walk away, and some settle for integrity-eroding compromises that continue rotten policies and practice. Others, like you, fight for a human-centered society. We have a choice. Either we allow this lethal absence of hope to fester and watch as our country and our city self-destruct, or we decide to hold ourselves and our electeds, in the words of that Lutheran minister, to not simply bandage the wounds of victims beneath the wheels of injustice, but to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. Elders have a crucial role to play. Many of us have rock-solid experience from past liberation struggles. Some of us have time, and many of us are not easily intimidated. As you, Annemarie, found a way to deny greed and soullessness an easy path, we must now find our courage and integrity and create a fiercely compassionate way forward. Thank you, Annemarie, and a very, very happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Kay. Indeed, all connected. I'd like to invite our next speaker, Brad Lander, my council member, and Alex. While Brad comes up, I want to repeat, because I know he wasn't here and most of you were, but I want to repeat that in the words of Eddie Ellis, we do this from three angles. This being significant social change for justice on this planet. It is through personal transformation, somewhat even illustrated by the beauty we see in the photos today by Annemarie. It's by community engagement, here we are, and it is by institutional accountability. And I want to thank Brad for being one of those people who help us, as Judith, stand up for institutional accountability for the system we call democracy and holding the truth to its cause. Thank you, Brad.
All right, so I'll get to my big birthday card in a minute. First, I want to thank the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture, and of course, especially Rebecca and Nancy for organizing this day. It's very fitting to be here. You know, this building is such a place of holding on to values in a neighborhood, and that is hard to do. It's hard to do for a lot of reasons. It's hard to do because life gets busy and there are many different things, and shortcuts, can get in the way. But obviously, it's especially hard when there's money involved, and the ways in which the profit motive and the demands, especially around real estate, but in all finance, pull away from those values is very powerful, and that's what we saw here. And having a community like this one, whose whole mission that is so centered around bringing people together, remembering those values, centering them, and preparing each other to go stand for them come what may is a very powerful thing. And we have some other great congregations and institutions in the neighborhood that do that, but none really that do it as strongly, as centrally to their mission as Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture. So thanks to you guys for being here, always for having been there, for all the seniors at Prospect Park residents, especially, of course, given all that she's given to this institution, for Annemarie, and for all of us. So thank you. And I just want to ask everyone to say a big thank you to this place, whether you're you know, this situation, I think one fascinating thing for me about it was, on the one hand, how much actions like this have become the norm in this city and society, and yet at the same time, how stark in relief this one showed people what's beyond the pale. And I think that's, for me, what I want to take forward from this to try to help other people see. Because on the one hand, if you told someone what was happening here, everyone would say, that is wrong. I mean, who would do that? And that's true. There was something about being willing to profit at the expense of 130 of our elderly neighbors in ways that we all knew would lead people to die before it was their time, would take the dignity of people's final years and trash that dignity. And almost everyone would say, you know, that's wrong, we should be able to stop it. And disappointed when we weren't able to stop it, but willing to come out and stand with us and say, we're going to show we know right from wrong, we're going to do whatever it takes to try to stand on the side of right here. Now, of course, really what took place at Prospect Park Residence is only different in degree from what unfortunately is happening every day throughout the city, when the value of making a little more money on a real estate transaction trumps the lives of someone whose home it is, whose kid goes to school in that neighborhood, who's lived there for many years, and whose dignity ought to let them keep living there. And that's an experience we are seeing over and over and over again. And people in this room are standing up to push back and fight and do more. But we have a real long way to go. I just think there's so many ways in which we are kind of tinkering at the margins and centering the values of dignity, so important here. We have a lot to do. Now, luckily, the partners who joined here are partners who helped everyone see that when you stand up with people and fight for dignity, kind of amazing things happen, whether you win or lose each individual court hearing, and are continuing that struggle. So I know you've thanked them before, but I really want to say some thank yous again. The legal team that represented Annemarie and the other seniors there was extraordinary, and they did it on a moment's notice. There was no question, where are we going to come up with the resources? Does this fit in our, you know, what we can do? It was like, of course we're going to show up. And that hundreds and hundreds of hours that they put in, a resource we did have was really hundreds of thousands of dollars of super smart legal time. And without that, we would not have been able to stand up together and help people be able to spend the time they were spend there to make plans for their lives and to win that settlement. So I know you thanked them before, and we have proclamations coming for the whole legal team, but we rushed the birthday proclamation, so people will be here today, and the procs for the lawyers are coming soon, but I want to be symbolically presenting them in front of all of you here today. So if the lawyers from this team could just stand up. Judith Goldiner, Kevin Cronin in the back, Jason Johnson and Fred Miller from Stella. I don't see Aurora and Carlo here, but she's here in spirit with us. They were the heart and soul and brains of this incredible effort. I would just like to say really a big thank you. it took lots of time, and all that time bought some time. And that really helped people have some real dignity for the seniors who were there, but also for all of us in the rest of the community, just reminded what a difference it makes when you fight, and when everyone knows what's right and wrong, and you fight a good, hard fight. And really good things happened as a result of that. So thank you guys all very, very much. And one thing I do want to note, in our struggle against many other evictions, we got a great report last week. A lot of people, one problem amongst many in the challenge of real estate greed over the lives of human beings in New York City is that the landlords can afford lawyers because they're looking to make more money, and the tenants, especially the low-income ones, usually can't. And historically, tenants therefore have been overwhelmingly unrepresented in housing court. But one thing that we've are getting right, is trending in the right direction, is that the city, both the mayor and the city council, have dramatically increased the dollars that we are spending to make sure that tenants who are facing evictions have lawyers. It was at about 1% a couple of years ago. It's now about at 1/4. And the new data that came out showed what an extraordinary difference it makes in saving people's homes. So we're going to keep pushing until people in housing and civil court, just like in criminal court, have a right to counsel, a right to representation. But some of the lawyers in the room have been fighting for that for a long time. And I want to say thanks for that and let you know that this is part of why you remember what a difference it makes when you get to see it up close and personal like that. So that was a great team. It also just warmed my heart how much this whole community did turn out. Park Slope gets mocked a lot for a lot of reasons, and many of them are good, and I like a good, self-mocking joke as much as anyone. And obviously we've lived a lot of these contradictions here, so even people who moved in long ago, if you were lucky enough to buy your home, now, like me, you have an asset of extraordinary value that I didn't earn, that you didn't earn, that I don't know where that exactly comes from. It starts to change kind of who you are and what you can do, and we've seen people get pushed out from the whole neighborhood as a result of rising rents. So on the one hand, this neighborhood embeds a lot of those contradictions. On the other hand, it is a neighborhood where people like this congregation hold on to values of justice and human dignity and show up and come together and stand up and fight for them. And I just get to see that so often. Just this week, we sent out one email to talk to people about issues of white privilege and racial justice, and 230 people showed up, and we had to stop advertising because we weren't going to have enough space in the room. And the way people turn out in politics, or to take care of the park, or to organize for PTAs. And the PTAs are a good example because we have people then saying, how are we going to make sure we have more diverse and more equal schools? We have people who turn out in the work for police reform and racial justice. And it's not, you don't get a pass for doing that, especially if you still live in the privilege that this neighborhood and if you're like me, being white and male, bring. And yet, when people come together around values like you did in this fight, it matters enormously, and there's kind of nothing else we can do but come together, ground ourselves in those values, and push forward to fight and we fight. So the most important task, of course, that I have today is to get to present Annemarie with this big birthday card. And I don't usually read the whole thing, but I'm going to read the whole thing today. Whereas, blah, blah. We are a nation made strong by select individuals who have lived a life long and full of wisdom and hard work and appreciation for our ever-changing world. Their unique and far-reaching perspective can remind all New Yorkers of the wonders that life has to offer and the importance of embracing such wonders at every opportunity. Annemarie Mogil is such an esteemed individual, and it is a privilege to join her family and friends celebrating her 94th birthday. Whereas Annemarie was born on September 18th, 1972 in Germany on the Baltic Sea. 22, that's what it says. 1972. On the Baltic Sea, and in 1927 immigrated to the United States with her family and lived on the Upper East Side. And whereas Annemarie is a dedicated artist who has worked endlessly with photography, appreciating natural landscapes and close-ups the most, Her most steadfast location for photos has been the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, where she's a lifetime member, and her first photo series was at the age of 16 when she was given a brownie box camera and encouraged to follow her passion. Whereas she enjoyed her marriages and has a daughter, a grandson, and several stepchildren, she moved to Brooklyn in 1973 and has lived for more than 30 years in Midwood, a home as we heard, she had to leave in 2013. And whereas working as an administrative assistant over the years, her love for nature, photography, and justice all found homes in Brooklyn, she and her husband Paul joined the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture, where they served various terms on the board in the 1970s and 80s, and her position now as a accidental but powerful housing rights activist began shortly after she was notified that every resident was being told to relocate. She stands her ground, refusing to be manipulated or thrown out. And whereas Ms. Mogil was always active and never afraid of adventure, a racing swimmer, ballroom dancer, and bike rider, she loved sports. At the age of 26, she got on a motorcycle for a day ride, and it turned into a ride across the country with several narrow escapes at that young age. And in those days, this was quite a feat for a woman, and she loves to have lived to tell the tales. Whereas Annemarie always pushes herself physically, and this is what she attributes her long life and healthy life. Still moving every day, even when a recent accident damaged her hip, she was up and moving within days, doing yoga and physical therapy, certain that nothing would let her down. And whereas all of us find extraordinary inspiration in this life so far, and are delighted to be here together to celebrate Annemarie's 94th birthday. Society of St. Louis. Where the award was from.
But, for those who aren't formed ethical culture, recruited one into politics, or be a planner, or community organizer like Brad, and decided to try to move religion and step forward, to focus on values and ethics. Thank you, Brad. Our feelings are
Thank you, Brad. I'm going to do something which would be prerogative of the presider. So well spoken, so well shared, and it's close to 12:30 where we usually close the service and have lunch. I'm not going to do questions and answers because that could take us a lot of time. I want to invite everybody to stay for lunch where we will actually also have some more of your traditional birthday party celebration. I hope we can do some photo ops. I'd love all the lawyers with Annemarie and Brad to come together. It would be wonderful if we could just take a few minutes together to celebrate.